So it's my pleasure to invite the next two speakers, Tania, Pointon and Wheki, to come up and obviously talk on systems change.
He mihi kironga ko rangi nui. He mihi raro ko papa tōnaku. He mihi ki ngā mea kei wainga nui ki ngā mea katoa. Ti hei mauri ora. He kākano ahau no Waikato tainui. He mokopuna au no Ngāti Haua, Ngāti Koro ki Kahukura, me Ngāti Pākehā hoki. Ko Jahvaya Wheki tōku ingoa, he tangata whenua ahau.
Kia ora e te whānau. My voorouders is van Suid-Afrika en die Nederlands. Die mounge of berg wat met my hart praat is die Drakensberg. Die rivier of awa wat my bekommernisse verlig is die Amgeni. Ek is in Durban groot geword. Ek woon nou in Kirikiriroa, maar my tūranga waiwai is in Whaingaroa. Ko Pouarahi o Seed Waikato ahau. Ko Tania Pointon toko ingoa. Ko tangata tiriti ahau. Tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa. Greetings to the ones that came before us, who are with you now. Greetings to all of you here, and also greetings to our future generations. It all starts with whakapapa. Whoops, backwards, forward. So I'll, for some context, just explain very briefly, because we are very short on time, and what we have to cover is a lot, and simultaneously acknowledging that every single one of the people or photos we share are stories in themselves with realms of complexity. So I just wanted to mention that it's not a case of going over. Seed Waikato is an organisation whose purpose is to be the ipu or container that nurtures social innovation projects where young people lead systemic change for an equitable and thriving future. Our journey since 2017 has been anything but linear. In fact, it's been so complex, and yet the heartbeat of our organisation continues to be the dreams of young people. We look very different to what we did when the seed began in 2017, but we are committed to centering te tiriti in everything we do. What that means is not just having some words, the words whanaungatanga, manaakitanga, kotahitanga on our wall. It's about embracing the complexity of what that holds and embodying those values on a daily basis. We're a highly emergent organisation, which means that failing and learning brings us to our favourite phrase, flirning, often. And whilst we embrace this complexity, we know we have things to do. And one of those things has become quite evident in our sensing and responding, that young people deeply care about the world they live in. They want to make change, but so often don't know how. So as we sensed and responded at Seed Waikato, things began to blossom and emerge. These young people were coming out and asking what it is that they could do. One of these young people, a champion of change, is Jah. So I'll step out of the way now and let Jah tell her story.
So in 2018, I started working for the Electoral Commission, enrolling rangatahi, young people and Māori to vote and to understand how to have their say and share their voice. And so we got invited as community liaisons to Seed Waikato, who at the time in 2018 were doing massive electoral events, having a massive focus on inviting young people to learn all about voting. So I started going to these events, and this event right here, Let's Give a Shit About Politics, completely changed the chemistry of my brain when I saw for the first time in our city a whole bunch of young people standing for our local council. And so they had an event dedicated to understanding, unpacking politics and local politics. And they even invited the mayor and other councillors, which to me at that time blew my mind that I could be speaking and understanding the system. And so at that point in time, it planted the seeds of change in my heart. And so I really loved what Seed was doing at that time. And so I kept on going to their events and community. And in about 2020, COVID happened, and it changed kind of the event scene and how Seed Waikato was putting out events. And it motivated me on my change journey. I was going through an awakening after having interaction with whenua that kind of planted a new way of seeing. And as I walked into Hamilton City Council to do some advocating for this whenua that I cared about, I laid eyes on our city's coat of arms, and for the first time I saw that it wasn't a symbol that represented me. And so I felt really activated to do something about it and to work out how can we change this, or how could we have kōrero about coat of arms. So that led me to engaging more in our city's things, having my say on certain kaupapa like He Pau Manawa Ora, connecting with kaumātua who taught me all about the history of our whenua in local context in Kirikiriroa, and even connecting with other local legends on my journey. And so Tan saw me out in the streets doing some advocacy, and she was like, yo, Ja, I love what you're doing. Can you come and mahi for Seed Waikato? I remember our first hui so vividly in my mind, because she said to me, I love what you're doing, but you need community beside you. You can't do this alone. And so I got employed at Seed Waikato. One of my first kaupapa that I was invited to do was a project called Circles. And Circles was all about bringing together young people with similar interests. What we learned from doing this was that young people care about things, they want to make a change, just like me, but they don't know how. So this invited us to the birth of Seeds for Change, which is a national systems change network that we have. And it was at this time in 2023, with the birth of Seeds for Change, that I also wanted to reconnect and go on my reconnection haringa to learn about my pepeha, to learn te reo Māori and reclaim my mother tongue. And Tania was so supportive of my haringa, which was a relief, because it can be really scary navigating reconnection with your own identity in an organisation if you don't know that you're going to be accepted. So she supported me all the way. And alongside that haringa, I started to interview a whole bunch of different systems change makers across the mutu. We wanted to understand what it was that they were doing, what they were learning, and also develop a map so that we could share with our young people and teach them where they want to go if they want to make change. We also made a report, what we heard report, speaking about some of the points that we learned from speaking with incredible change makers. So these were some of the points that we found. He hononga, he whakawhanaungatanga, relationships and connections, having cups of tea, having yarns, building relationships, te mana o te hapari, te kaha o te tikanga, community power and cultural strength. I see this point as intergenerational kōrero, learning from our elders. He tirohanga whānui, he anga whakamua, holistic perspectives and future-focused thinking. How can we go back to our whakapapa to learn and help shape the future?
All right, so while all this was happening, something was happening inside of me too. I started seeing things I couldn't unsee. Systems thinking leads to activation and systems change, but systems change is an inside job. It starts from the inside, which means I had to seriously start asking myself the questions if I wanted to be a systems repeater or a systems restorer. And this looked ugly, maybe some nice photos, but it was messy. And it's a heart space job. It's about healing, and it's about really, it was about, and still continues to be on a daily basis, getting curious about my white Western world views and the lens through which I even see systems change. You know, I'm learning now that the way we're doing systems change is still through the westernized lens of how we've always done things, and that's what we're going to get. The same of what, you know, what we continue to speak about with our hands in the air and going, what now, what next? So, when I read this, when a complex system is far from equilibrium, small islands of coherence in a sea of chaos have the capacity to shift the entire system to a higher order. So when we began asking these questions, what would happen if we started building islands of coherence? What happens if other change makers were feeling isolated and lonely, wanted to learn together, wanted to also honor deep relationships and be the connective tissue for transformational change? How it happened was very similar to how Diane showed it on her diagram, where we started building a community of practice. And the invitation to you now is, please take the QR code and you're invited to join our community of change makers, because we need a wide variety of people that look at things, that can share, be it podcasts or ideas. In fact, is it working? It is, because through Hapari, Joanna found out about this here today. So please have a look at it. Please feel free to join, and it is, you know, a call to action.
And so as we reflect on our haidinga, the power of going on our own haidinga, of reconnecting with ourselves, with our own lineage, with our own whakapapa, with our own purpose, by speaking and working relationally, the islands of coherence that can emerge. Here are some examples of all of the different spaces that we've been invited into. For example, from Seed came Seeds for Change, Hapuri, Tomorrow Together, which is now where I'm a part of, shaping a Future Generations Act for the Mokopuna. Systems Change, a community of wahine doing systems change. Walk Together, focusing on intercultural facilitation with an equitable systemic change lens. And even the Māori Women's Welfare League, which I'm so proud to be of, and witness complex governance at the highest levels of Haumotu. And none of this would have happened if we didn't connect and have kōrero or conversations with people. We've been building an ecosystem so that our future, ngā kākano, can flourish. And through those haidingas and building the ecosystem around us, we're now able to give back on a local level by having ngā kākano, which is where, much like my own haidinga, we teach about the whakapapa of local tanga, teaching young people about civics, teaching young people about systems change and systems thinking, and impacting not only Kirikiriroa, Waikato, but also our own organisation, Hapu and Whānau.
And if there's one thing, it's systems change is heart-based change. It starts from the inside, but you do need your people. Swim to your islands of coherence, and yeah, together we can work this out. I'm learning that it's only when I am part of the problem that I can be part of the solution. So yeah, something to think about. Kia ora.
Thank you both so much. That was really excellent talk. Really appreciate it. We have time for 2 questions. Any questions from the audience? Any Slack channel? So, one of I guess a question I had while I was watching is, you're building all these connections, and I suppose I'll put on my complex systems hat. How do you feel like the complex system work we do, both qualitative and quantitative, can sort of help I don't know, support the communities you're building to realise that change?
I think one thing that's been coming up for me is noticing how we're working still in silos very much, and how academia and community kind of want to be together in ways, but we haven't invested in relationship potentially, or I'm not exactly sure. There'll be many reasons, and that would be complex reasons too, but I'm curious about how we can explore ways of being, you know, if there's research topics that need to be explored, are we looking to community organisations to find out what it is that they need, and we go on that hiding it together around, you know, a research paper and coming out with some findings that would be really valuable for those community organisations, and then vice versa. So how can we cross-pollinate, and how can we like intentionally know that we're building ecosystems and kind of link those islands of coherence together to lift the natural order of things. That would be for me a practical step, you know, kind of merging those relationships and strengthening those relationships, and super curious to have more conversation around what that could look like.
And I'll answer as well, because I feel like there's a real space right now in the sense of thinking about how culture can impact organisations and its own hiding it. I think often working in a lot of different institutions, Māori and Pacifica people, you know, like we heard yesterday, it's very structured and very hard. And so I think there's beautiful stories based in the way that how is culture impacting, how can it impact, and how can it be seen as a positive. We've heard from rangatahi, migrants, immigrants, that they also want to feel connected to whenua, but there isn't spaces to allow them to do that. And so what are the spaces, the stories that we can tell that really highlight the importance and the impact of culture on an organisation and on people's own personal haere?
Thank you very much. So I'd just like to thank our speakers here, but also Ray for your talks in the session. So thanks to all of you for the great talks.